Hello to my fellow history lovers. We are still in beautiful California, and we have been talking about the role of Russia in California. And right now we are up to Tsar Alexander, who, if you remember, his father was Tsar Paul, who only survives his reign like 5 years and is killed by his officers. And now his son takes over. And his son is dealing with Napoleon right now as Napoleon starts his doomed march into Russia, into Moscow. But meanwhile, the Russian American company financially is doing well, but really on the backs of these people who are the Aleut, indigenous tribes of Alaska. So they're using brutal, by they I mean the Russians, tactics on this indigenous tribe. What they would sometimes do is hold wives and children hostage until the men came back with sufficient furs and pelts. Mostly it is below the sea otter that they are capturing and using to trade the fur for. So what happens now is we've talked about they started under Catherine the Great in Siberia. They go across Alaska. Part of that is under Tsar Alexander's father, which was Tsar Paul the First. And now they're actually down. Not only have they taken over Alaska, but they're now down actually in California. And they create. We're finally getting to this part. A fort called Fort Ross. So the purpose of the fort was twofold. One was to continue to hunt these sea otters. And interestingly, we forget what an international scene this is, even back then, is the money for the trade is actually mostly going to China. And that's where they're selling the pelts and getting quite a lot of money. But the main reason for creating, and also indigenous tribesmen are forced to come with them to do the hunting. But in addition, as we said, the American Russian company or Russia American company is based in Alaska, and they don't have a lot of food sources. So a big part of this Fort Ross is we're going to start coming down into California, and they're hoping to create enough food sources that now they have an outpost where they can send food back. But that part doesn't work very well. Think kind of thin soil, mists. It's north of San Francisco, so not the best growing area. But just like I mentioned, that King Charles III of Spain, is worried about incursion from the Russians from coming down from the north and worried about the British coming over, east to west. The Russians also are worried about the Spanish coming up and they're worried about the British coming over. So they're trying to really hold on to this fort. But it doesn't end up working out for them. The soil is not good enough to support, as we said, enough kind of food growing that they can support their Alaskan um, parts of Alaskan main headquarters of their company. And eventually they abandon the fort and they sell it to someone who, and now I wish I would remember, Sutler, I think it was called. Was that his name? Anyway, it was the gold rush, the guy that actually, ironically, a lot of the gold rush ends up. I wish I could remember the name. I apologize. I'll try to look it up and put it in the notes. But anyway, thank you for letting me share, and I'm signing off from beautiful California.